Hello and welcome to Unhacked. I'm Bryan Graf, SVP of Compliance Advisory here at Abacode, and today we're going to be talking more about HIPAA, SIEM, and incident response. In the previous episode, we discussed risk assessments and how to calculate risk. Today, we're going to dive further into how SIEM and incident response are vital to complying with HIPAA. To recap, HIPAA, or the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act, is a law that requires any organization that stores, processes, or transmits protected health information, or PHI, to protect that data via safeguards defined by the law. One of the most important safeguards is 164.308A6II. Here's the language of the control listed below. The entire goal of safeguards in HIPAA are to protect the security of PHI. Threats to PHI are called security incidents. According to this safeguard and other safeguards, not only must your organization be able to identify security incidents, but also each individual record that may have been accessed or downloaded during the incident. You must be able to notify patients in the event that their records have been stolen or accessed. I use the same analogy in all of my videos. Think of security incidents as fires. Every security mechanism can be thought of as a firefighting tool. They can be sprinklers, extinguishers. Your security personnel can be thought of as firefighters, and they use these tools to put out the fires. All these tools have one thing in common. They are completely useless if you don't know that there's a fire occurring. The SIEM is your fire alarm. You see it in the first word of the control we just discussed, identify. You must be able to identify a security incident. Now, let's just think of a typical incident, the most common way that organizations are breached, and that is via phishing attacks. Think of the personnel in your organization that have access to PHI. Do you even know who they all are? Because hackers do. All they need to do is go onto LinkedIn, and just by the personnel's title, they can tell who has access to PHI and who doesn't. So now all they have to do is send all those personnel phishing emails in the hopes that one of them clicks on the wrong link or just provides their password credentials to them over email, and now they have access to all of their email system and potentially their SharePoint and other systems as well that may contain PHI. So these hackers can now download, they can access your emails, they can access any SharePoint files, so Excel files that have PHI stored in them. They can access whatever they want from that employee's credentials. They can use that email account to pose as that employee and then email other internal employees or customers, partners, vendors, posing as that employee and trying to perpetuate the attack into other systems. Now, these hackers are smart and they can use these email accounts without you even knowing. So they use them at night, they cover their tracks, they don't leave traces so that you will not know that they are in your email account for days, weeks, or months at a time. How does your organization identify this attack is occurring? Your employee can't detect it. Your IT personnel won't be able to detect it. If the hacker has the correct credentials, it's just going to look like somebody logged in normally. So the answer was without a SIEM, you cannot identify this attack. So you are not compliant with HIPAA with this safeguard if you cannot identify this type of attack while it's occurring. You probably won't be able to determine any type of attack occurred until the damage is already done and you're doing a forensic investigation, which is weeks after the fact. So the damage is already done, the incident already occurred. You are not able to mitigate or prevent future damage from happening. And even then, a forensic investigation may not prove anything because depending on how your systems were configured, if your logs were not configured correctly, there may not be any information for them to do an investigation on. Also, if the hackers were able to escalate privileges, they may be able to turn logging off. They may be able to erase logging records so that they can cover all their tracks and you'll never know what happened. A SIEM, a Security Information and Event Management System, aggregates logs from all relevant devices in your organization to establish a baseline of activity in order to detect unauthorized activity. SIEMs may be able to detect that employee clicked on a page to a malicious link and was directed to an unsafe site. It may have been able to detect that a hacker was attempting to log into the system from an unknown IP address or at a time that the user normally doesn't log into their system. Without a SIEM, your organization doesn't know an incident occurred until the damage has already been done. Your organization is not compliant if it cannot detect security incidents. Worse, without a SIEM, aggregating logs, or even worse than that, working off an IT infrastructure configured to not properly log events, you're unable to respond to that incident, and you are unable to notify patients that their records have been stolen because you don't know which ones have been accessed. This could put your organization at risk for the maximum financial penalties under HIPAA and at risk for losing future business once the breach becomes public. Remember that your customers and partners, if they also process PHI, they're also bound by HIPAA. And according to their vendor management process, now your company has just become a liability. Will they risk doing business with you in the future? So bottom line, meet with your IT team and your key stakeholders. Ask them what capability you currently have to detect security incidents. Mention specific incidents, phishing, ransomware attacks, things like that. Ask them if all relevant IT infrastructure is currently configured to log security events. That's step one. If the devices aren't set up to log security events, then you're never going to know that a security event is occurring. And then ask them if there is a plan in place for when a security incident is detected. Remember, detection is only that first part of that control. The second part is the response. How was your IT team responding? How are they responding? How are they communicating to the employee? How are they communicating internally? Who's responsible for what? Are they taking systems offline? Are they monitoring systems? This has to be done prior to the incident occurring. Otherwise, you're just going to be reacting. And talk with a security expert to determine what detection mechanisms are right for your organization. So I'm Bryan Graf, and this was Unhacked, and we'll see you next week.